I'm Emma, who usually lacks confidence in anything, and lately I've been feeling especially depressed. I have a younger sister named Charlotte, who is 2 years younger than me, and I have always been compared to her. Charlotte, unlike me, is blessed with good looks that people would say, "You're really sisters?" And I've also been subjected to some heartless words. It made me feel insecure about myself. What was even more painful was that even my parents treat Charlotte and me differently. For as long as I can remember, my mother, Olivia, would always say, "Charlotte has a really pretty face, right?" She always doted on Charlotte like that. I remember that my father, but especially my mother, loved me very much. Just because they were praising Charlotte, they didn't mean to put me down. But it hurt during my childhood to see her only being adored. I'm not pretty enough for them to love me. I've been so concerned that I once thought, now that I'm an adult, I don't beat myself up like that, but still, confidence remains a difficult thing for me to achieve. I don't begrudge my parents, but it's kind of sad that I'm not close with my parents, which is neither good nor bad, but I have only been back home a few times a year since I left home to get a job. My sister is still living at home and working part-time. I heard that she got a job once, but quit because of relationship problems. If my parents allow it, I'm fine with it. But just the other day, I got this call from Charlotte. "Sis, it's been a long time. I've forgotten what you look like because you haven't been coming home to our parents at all. By the way, I've decided to use your room. I threw away all the leftover stuff and everything." That's what it was about. "Oh, you threw it away?" I wanted to at least get a word in edgewise before I had some stuff I was going to pick up later, I replied. "It's bad enough that you didn't show up to get it all this time, right? I mean, none of them looked like they were worth anything, right? I was right to get rid of all that junk, and I got rid of the clothes and stuff too. I thought I'd get one that I could wear. Your taste in clothes is so bad, haha. So I doubt your sense of style." She made fun of me every single time like that. You dispose of someone's property without permission and not a single word of apology? I mean, if you're going to contact me like this, you could have said something to me before you threw it away, I replied in frustration. "I just happen to be free right now, so I called you. Don't get mad at me for such a small thing. Are you sure you're eating right? Haha. You're only wasting time on dieting because it will only make you irritated," she said without thinking about people's feelings. But Charlotte is always like this, and I'm already used to it, so I've given up. But when she makes fun of me, I get annoyed. And if she says something bad to me, I still get hurt. That's why I've been feeling depressed. I don't think the parents are aware of Charlotte's true nature. The thing is that she looks cute and she's good at making amends to our parents. Unlike me, she's very picky and our parents don't seem to mind. I used to envy her, but now I kind of feel a little sad for them. With that personality, it's no wonder she couldn't fit into society, even if our parents accept her. She also left the company due to relationship problems. I believe Charlotte's attitude is the root of all that. I wasn't as pretty or sweet as Charlotte, so I had to distract my parents with other things. It helped that I didn't hate studying. I managed to get into college on a scholarship, and now I work for a big company. I am enjoying living alone while sending money to my parents. I'm happy in my own way. However, Charlotte is still being taken care of by her parents, and I don't mean to put her down, but I'm afraid that if she keeps doing what she's doing, she's bound to get hurt someday. Maybe it's time for her to stop looking down at me. A few days later, I received the news of the death of my grandfather Scott, whom I loved very much. I regretted not seeing him lately. I have nothing but good memories about my grandfather. My grandfather noticed that my parents were only concerned about Charlotte. He was always pleasant and kind to me, never hurting me. So I could act like a child when I saw him. I'll attend the funeral the day after tomorrow, and I'm going to make sure I say goodbye. My parents and Charlotte are coming, of course, but I haven't seen them in a while, so I'm a little nervous. Charlotte is definitely going to say something, and I'm starting to feel overwhelmed thinking about that. Charlotte didn't like Grandpa, and if it were true, I'd prefer her not to come, but that's not possible. I just hope nothing goes wrong, because I want to mourn him in peace. And then Charlotte had a hell of a case. On the day of the funeral, I was on my way to the venue alone. When I arrived, my parents were already there. Charlotte wasn't. "Charlotte's not coming?" I asked my mother. "She was kind of taking her time getting ready and asked us to go ahead, so we did," she said. I would say that even at a funeral, she would come well dressed. Then it was time, and everyone was seated. Just as the funeral was about to begin, the door to the room opened. To my surprise, there stood Charlotte in a flamboyant pink mini dress. I was confused and in a cold sweat, and my parents were taken aback. Charlotte should have known that funerals are for mourning. There was no way the funeral could continue with the appearance of such a person. We paused, and my relative Grace became angry. "Hey, where do you think you are? What are you doing here dressed like that?" she said, pressing Charlotte for an answer. My parents were embarrassed and kept looking down, but Charlotte didn't care about that. "Oh, this dress? Isn't it cute? It's the last time I'm going to see my grandpa, so I dressed up and came to see him." I had never heard of this kind of reasoning. Surprised by that statement, our parents stood stuck on the floor, saying nothing to Charlotte. Instead, I rushed to Charlotte's side. "You go home and get changed right now," I told her. "Sis, you're usually sober, but when you wear mourning clothes, you're even more sober. Maybe Grandpa would want a prettier girl to mourn for him. I didn't like Grandpa that much, but I wonder if he's happy to have such a pretty girl here." He was not afraid to say that he was a good guy. Know your place. Don't make trouble for everyone with your ideas. I tried desperately to convince her otherwise. "I'm me no matter where I am, and I like to be the center of attention wherever I go. Sis, you're just pretending to have common sense like that, because I'm beautiful and you're jealous, haha." She said that without any hint of consideration. "What are you talking about? That's none of your business right now. You are free to think what you want, but this is a place to mourn our grandfather. You came all dressed up like that to get attention. Do you really think Grandpa is happy with you?" I scolded Charlotte frantically. Then Charlotte said, "I think I'd be delighted. I mean, Emma, you seem to think you were the most adored by our grandfather. He loved me too, you know. So, no matter how I dress up to come here, Grandpa will be glad I did." Charlotte didn't seem to listen to anything I had to say. I didn't know what to do anymore. Charlotte had no interest in listening to me. Seeing our exchange, my parents finally intervened. "Emma is right about this one. You need to come back dressed appropriately for the occasion. I'll go back home with you for now. Come on, let's go." My mother took Charlotte by the arm and tried to lead her out of the hall, but Charlotte refused to do so. "I don't want to have to go back and start all over again after I've gone to all this trouble of dressing up so nicely. Enough already. Let's just get this thing started. People make too much of a fuss over something as simple as what to wear," she said selfishly like a child. My face was almost burning with embarrassment. Just when I thought I was going to send off my grandfather quietly, my memories of him. Charlotte ruined everything, and I felt so bad for everyone else. Perhaps for once my parents felt the same way I did. Still, Charlotte did not want to leave. We argued at the door. Then Grace saw us. "If you don't listen to your family, even when they gently warn you, let me be the first to put it sternly. You get out of here right now. Not only are you dressed like that, but with your attitude, you have no right to mourn Scott." Charlotte was startled and froze when she saw Grace suddenly yell at her. "Even an empty-headed kid who comes to a funeral dressed like you can at least understand English, right? Then you understand what I'm saying, right? See? Now get out of here." Grace's strong tone seemed to make even Charlotte flinch. "But I don't want to leave," Charlotte protested in a quiet voice. "If you don't leave, the funeral will remain suspended like this. We all come here when we can, to mourn Scott, of course. And now, because of one person's actions, everyone here is in trouble. Do you understand that? I said, you don't belong here. All right, you go on home alone. You don't have to come back." Grace stared at Charlotte very intimidatingly and clearly stating the facts. Charlotte, who has never been yelled at by her parents, wound up like this for the first time in her life. She was overwhelmed and scared by Grace's strong tone and started crying with a frightened look on her face. You didn't have to get mad at me for showing up in a cute outfit." Hearing this, Grace was taken aback and said, "You're the only one who thinks she's pretty. You said you wanted attention, so do you like being looked at with cold stares? Then it's a great success, isn't it?" Then the others around us started laughing. Charlotte was shocked and embarrassed by the fact that she was being laughed at. She left the venue screaming and crying. I stood there in amazement. My parents left after Charlotte. I was thinking that maybe I should get out of there too. Grace then spoke to me. "You should stay here. Scott used to talk to me about you before he died. He says you were really devoted to your grandfather. You haven't seen him lately, have you? Give your final goodbye." All those words stopped where I was going. I decided to stay as Grace asked me to. I knew that if I didn't get to say goodbye to my grandfather because of Charlotte, I would regret it for the rest of my life. With that in mind, the funeral resumed without my parents and Charlotte. The three never returned until it was over. I was able to attend all the way to the end without worry. My parents left their own parents' funeral in the middle of the day. They regretted not going back after all. Actually, there's a follow-up to this story. After the funeral, I stopped by my parents' house. Charlotte and our parents had a big fight. I've never seen them scolding her so much before. "I've spoiled you too much in the past. I knew we had to get you straightened out at some point, but I never thought that at my father's funeral I would regret the way I raised you. You can only be cute when you're a child. From now on, be a grown-up and behave yourself." Such things were said, and Charlotte seemed upset rather than rebellious. "You never said that before. Why do you all blame me? And sis, don't just stand there and watch. Help me." She asked me for help, but I would never take your side. "I'll never forget the many times you've made fun of me. You've been a kid longer than most. It's time for you to be on your own." When I said this so strongly, Charlotte looked more frustrated than I had ever seen her before. "What? So it's okay for me to leave this house? Dad and Mom will miss me when I'm gone." Charlotte started to rebel. "Oh, that might work too. Let's give each other some space and look at ourselves. Isn't it about time you experience living on your own? Find a job where you can work as an employee, not part-time, because I'm not going to help you." She was surprisingly cold like that, and I was surprised too, but I thought it was kind of nice. Charlotte again fled the house in tears. She doesn't have a place to go or money to spend, so I'm sure she'll be back soon. Our parents were willing to discipline her again, so I suppose that Charlotte's hell would not end when I returned. As for me, I've been relatively neglectful with you, but I'm glad you turned out so well. I'm sorry I've only spoiled Charlotte. My parents apologized to me. Frankly, I was troubled to hear them apologize for such a thing, but I told them it was okay. But I was kind of happy about it. I had a feeling that from now on, they would take good care of me. I had a bad experience at the funeral, but maybe it was not all a waste of time. I don't know how Charlotte will be rehabilitated, and whether she can be rehabilitated is a mystery. Still, I think I've at least reflected on the situation, so from now on I hope she will become a more decent adult. We can't wait to see how Charlotte grows up without the help of our parents. Of course, I'm not going to help her, so I'm going to take it easy and let her see what happens. So that's the whole story of what happened at the funeral. I think my grandfather is watching over me in heaven. I feel like I'm more open with my parents than I used to be. I think I'll try to go back to my parents' house more often from now on.